Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show. Today, bringing you another fascinating guest helping to create a better tomorrow on a very unique front. Today, we have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Nag Vaidyanathan, who is both Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President at Duck Creek Technologies, which is a leading provider of core system solutions to both the property and casualty and general insurance industries, where the company's enterprise software as a service solution, insurance carriers able to navigate various forms of uncertainty and capture market opportunities, ultimately much faster than their competitors. Nag was responsible for the execution of Duck Creek's current and emerging product roadmaps, ultimately assuring the adoption of various software development patterns, architecture standards, and frameworks. He is a senior IT leader. He loves to work at the intersection of diversity of people and what they bring to work, ways of working, infrastructure, and different technology landscapes. Previously, Nag was accountable for all application delivery and operations, digital transformation, infrastructure, IT security, and data at OneMain Financial as part of their executive team. He's also served roles at both Allstate and Dansk Bank. In addition to all of that, Nag serves as a board advisor for the Indo-American Community Services Organization, running programs serving the Indo-American community across the country, as well as a member of the Board of Pratham, Chicago chapter, serving underprivileged kids in India. In his spare time, Nag also serves as a mentor of the Mentium Corporation, engaging in different mentoring events as a way of giving back. Nag has his MBA in finance and strategy from DePaul University, his master's in engineering management from Manipal Institute of Technology, and his PhD from Copenhagen Business School, Department of Digitalization, where he spent time studying the enrichment of retail customer experiences using augmented reality. A lot of really cool themes here. Nag Vaidyanathan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ira.
It's a fascinating background, and I'd love to start off hearing a little more about it, especially the digitalization sciences and the augmented reality piece. But talk a little bit about your background, Naga, if you would, a little bit about where you grew up, how you developed these broad interests in finance, in engineering, and then of course digitalization. I think that'd be a great way to start.
Yeah, no, thank you. I would say I was very privileged. I had a lot of people who wanted to see me do well. I was born in Bangalore in southern India, in a very humble setup. I always tell my kids, right, we had nothing when we grew up. And I think that really helped me see the world very differently in terms of how I could help others, as well as how I could use whatever I learned to make somebody better. So those two things really propelled me in my journey. And the other part was I would kind of funnily talk to my parents saying, I'm going to see 100 countries. And I had no clue at that time because we had no money or anything, but I would just make these weird statements at home. And I think those statements forced me to do something different to show that, hey, I can do what I say, right? Was the hill easy to climb? No, there were a lot of holes along the way. I fell down quite often, but then I always felt there was somebody to pick me up and make me feel that I could be better than who I was at that time. So that really helped me in terms of forming my own thought process in terms of the fields I should be in and how I could add value. So couple of things, right? Education is one thing, but I would say a lot of this was the surroundings, right? The people I worked with in the different cultures, the learnings I had from each of them in terms of how they grew up, what they kind of went through. And then I started drawing patterns early in life saying, hey, these are the types of people who actually are in this world. And what does that mean in terms of giving back? So that kind of led into me getting into engineering, finance, and then saying, hey, I can actually see the value of money that informs these patterns. So I was making up my own story in a sense, saying this is how I can make things better. So that has been kind of a key thing for me. As a leader, people know me as more of an execution leader than a conceptual leader. The other part I would say in terms of my PhD, this was a funny thing too. I would tell my wife I want to do my PhD. She'll say, nope, you're done. You've done your 2 masters. You should not do anything more. And then when I went to Denmark, no one was there to bug me in a sense. So I decided to do some teaching. And then I talked to the professors and I said, hey, can I do a PhD? They said, really, you? Will you have time to do it? Because you're the CIO of Dansk Bank. I said, no, I'll find time. I have nothing to do in the nights and weekends. Let me get into it. So I got into that journey. And as it would happen, the pandemic happened, which made me, I would say, more available to do things when other people were sleeping. So I was in the US. So I would take the courses from the midnight to like 5 or 6 in the morning, and then go to the normal work at OneMain Financial. And then in the night, I would kind of work on homework and kind of forming my theses and things like that. The reason I chose augmented reality is also interesting. And now the whole world is talking about metaverse and what they want to do. In my head, I was just thinking, there are so many people who don't have stuff, right? Thinking of my parents. So all 4 parents lived with me at home. And their experiences, right? How can I make it better? How can they relive things? So I was thinking immersive technologies is a good way to do that. People who don't have, they want to enjoy a day in the museum, maybe in a park, but they can't go to it. Why can't they live in that, right? So I used to think that way. And I chose retail because I felt that was a space where customer experience intersection was the most important. At that time, I had no idea of the pandemic. Right. So I said, maybe that's a good intersection to study. And I was fortunate again with the connections I had who let me kind of study, right, do case studies with them that informed my thesis. And I purposely chose augmented reality versus virtual reality because I wanted the human in that reality setting versus saying everything is kind of artificial, right? So that was the whole idea. So yeah, briefly, that's what it is. I still like to learn. I still code. I just like kind of doing those things. Absolutely. I'm an introvert too. I'm a super introvert. So.
Well, no, that's been a fascinating journey, and clearly with the the augmented reality, you predicted that one pretty well ahead of time. But no, it's a fascinating journey. You know, I'm sitting here. You know, I was reading through in anticipation of a discussion, sort of the Duck Creek technology portfolio and a bit about the company. Before we get into it, though, so here I am. I'm a consumer of insurance products, to say, and I basically, I get a check every month that I sign, a bill every month that I sign, and I pay for it. And God forbid anything happens, I'm covered. Duck Creek, though, is a little behind the scenes, right? I mean, you are I think the motto on the website says, you're insurance people that work with the insurance industry. Before we get into the company and its background and some of what it does, talk a little bit, if you would, about the state of what is it, property and casualty, or just the broader insurance industry in 2022. And some of the technical challenges that, I was looking at your list here of customers. What are the issues they have to deal with? And ultimately, we'll get into how Duck Creek solved these issues, but talk a little bit about the industry landscape, if you would.
Yeah. There are, if you look at it, right, there's a lot of things. Let me start with the surrounding. Insurance was always, I think even now, many people think of it as a boring industry, right? A lot of regulations and rules, and how can you do fun stuff in insurance? Because you always had to adhere to what some state says or country says, right? Mm-hmm. And everything was protocol-based statements and procedures, and right, all our rules. It was all rule-based in a sense, right? I think what has happened is everything requires triggers and events. And I know it was an unfortunate event, but if you think of COVID, what it really did was it brought people to, I call, a more democratized kind of setup. No one is bigger than someone else as long as you have the ingredients to play with. So what it did from that perspective, as I see the insurance landscape, was when we were through the COVID or in the COVID, we were not driving as often as we would, right? We were not going to places as we would. We were not buying things as we would. So it kind of redefined some of the parameters that are fundamentals of insurance. I am not going to drive 100 miles a day to work every day. I am going to drive when I choose to drive to do something special. The Ubers and Lyfts started saying, hey, you don't have to even own a car. You can drive with us. The other thing that happened is household concepts started shifting. More people started being in the house. It redefined how a home is being used. So previously we would sleep, get up, get ready, go to work. The home was empty. And then we would come in the evening, the kids would come home, we'll all do blah, blah, blah. We sleep and then the day is done. Now we are all working from home many of the days. So it's redefining how we even use things at home, like the lighting, the rooms, the toilet, everything, right, has changed. And I would say the third thing that has shifted really is the sense of value and cost, right? People have really started thinking about, why do I matter? What am I doing differently? The whole thing of ESG has become a huge thing now. Sustainability, the green technologies, all these things have suddenly taken a lot of importance. So I would say when all of these ingredients you kind of bring together, insurance companies are really, and added to that, the whole supply chain effects, right? Logistics have become harder now. Embargoes, the Ukraine-Russia war, all these things have put constraints on flow of stuff, flow through the supply chain. So it has added to costs. Severity costs have gone up. Costs of accidents have gone up. People are only driving when they choose to drive. Cars are not as available as they were. The prices have gone up of real estate. Shared economies have become the new norm. Shared autos become the new norm, right? So all of these shifts have had a real impact on the P&C insurance. And the other part that COVID taught many of us were, none of us are special. We can all become digital users. And the digital transformation has happened in different ways in the insurance space. People are not able to embark on the full transformation because it's super expensive and it takes a lot of time and they have so much of legacy tech debt there. The other piece is I have to react quickly. Another very interesting thing I learned was pet insurance, right? COVID required people to have friends at home. So many of the people actually bought pets. And suddenly everybody's talking about pet insurance. So new forms of insurance have come up. I was reading another thing about micro elements in insurance. Suddenly your dishwasher, your washing machine have become even more critical, that they function all the time because we are working a lot from home. So the concept of insurance not is just the home itself, but what is within the home. Right. So those are some of the things I think have started shaping some of our insurance carriers. A line of business kits have become more important than saying I have a huge claim system or a huge billing platform or policy platform. Can I cater to this kind of business uniquely? Can I have this scope of business be a digital journey with a human touch rather than a human journey with a digital touch? So it's kind of shaped that differently. I call it on-ramps and off-ramps have shifted in customer journeys now. I need to be able to talk to a human when I choose to, but when I talk to that human, the human should have enough context of what I've done so far, so I don't have to repeat everything. So it's redefining flows of information between legacy systems. And then when you have the new line of business layered on top of it, all of that has to be available. Workflows have changed. Nobody has patience now. Previously, you would go to the insurance agency, understand what your loss is. Now they're like, they want to upload a photo. They'll say, yeah, I can do a self-serve. You just tell me what you're going to pay me back minus the deductible, right? So those are some of the shifts I've started seeing that has put, I would say, a degree of focus and pressure for Duck Creek as a software producer, right? How do I build software that does not require our insurers to rethink or think of what should be always available? I should be able to add value. And I would say that is the greatest differentiator somebody like Duck Creek can provide.
Excellent. Excellent. And I appreciate you walking us through that. Yeah, and I have to say that is not boring. That that is quite interesting. But no, that's perfect, because it really set things up then for sort of I went, as I said, I was sort of navigating through the Duck Creek site and into the solution section, and there's a few areas that I pulled out I thought would be interesting, and I'll sort of give them all to you in one dump, but you can take your time with this. Some of the interesting components of the platform that sort of rang, has had some similarities to other themes that we've discussed in other industries. One was just the whole principle, and you mentioned this a bit about personalization, that we're in an era where things are getting more and more and more personalized, specifically for the different types of consumers. The second, this concept that you have of a product factory where different insurance companies can actually practice. I think of that as sort of analogous to, we talked about digital twins a bit on the show in the past, that you can practice through these technologies. And lastly, the sort of third part of that, this principle of jettisoning what you call evergreen technologies, legacy systems. Once again, I think about moving to the cloud, edge computing, some of these different models we have. This is a long-winded question, but I'll hand that one back to you. Walk us through a little bit of this, what I'll term the Duck Creek platform. And if there's things here that are more important that I missed, please talk about them as well.
No issues, no issues. So it's funny, right? I think of things in a very simplistic way, and people sometimes say, wow, right? Work, people, and money. That's my triangle usually. And I've worked in different industries, right? I've worked in the aerospace industry, I've worked in banking, I've worked in manufacturing, and now in technology, outside of P&C insurance also. And the funny part is, it's usually how we use these three ingredients to create value. What COVID has done, if I go through the people part of the equation, right? And why it matters to the question you asked. Today, we can find people irrespective of which location they reside in. Previously, we were kind of fixated on physical offices. People have to show up for this time, and then you have to have these physical meetings to make a decision. New software has been created as collaboration tools. People can work very differently. They can be wherever, right? The other thing we have learned through this is I don't have to know insurance to be a great insurance engineer. Sure. I can bring perspectives from other industries. Maybe it's in the healthcare field, maybe aerospace field, and I can bring those nuances into how I create solutions, because now it's personalized. There has to be value add. And some of these industries have more of a value add perspective. I would say the third thing from a people standpoint that's also interesting is what I call democratization before. No one is big anymore. I have a hard way of setting up my computer for a meeting, and someone else might have a similar problem. I don't have an office, you don't have an office. We are all in this together. We're going to work together. So I would say what that has created within Duck Creek is solutioning collaboratively, thinking through what it means, me as a human versus me serving an insurance company. How are they going to be able to leverage what I build so it can serve their population in the best way? Okay, so that is one part. In terms of the technology itself, like I said, many of the larger carriers and even the smaller carriers, the tier 3, tier 4s, they don't have huge IT shops. So they rely on someone like Duck Creek to have a lot of it built for them, and they built upon it, right? So the whole concept of low code and evergreen becomes extremely critical, because you don't need to now think of what it, and overall I would say cloud, right? I don't have to think of it in terms of how much money do I have to spend now to run my operation shop? How do I deal with the security emerging threats that are happening, cybersecurity threats, right? How do I take care of consumption when I don't want to use this function all the time and I want to only pay when I need, like subscription-based consumption? I need to leverage value-added services. So when I do a home claim, I can also provide services to restore the kitchen, maybe restore the roofs. I have value-added services. So all this integration is available on the cloud because there are multiple people collaborating to see how we can create, and people broadly call it the ecosystem, right? How do I collaborate to make something better? And then I would say the last part that is interesting is the larger companies, because the pace at which shifting is happening in the digital channel, it does not make too much sense to take what they have and transform it to what is already available through a company like Duck Creek. So it gives them a way to think strategically in terms of how am I going to do a line of business, add value in a different way. So like if you take pet insurance as an example, I don't have to build all these components to say what kind of pet, when did the pet, was it right? What kind of animal is it? Where was it bought? How much do I spend on its food? What kind of health issues it might have? All that I can take care, and you only have to layer in the attributes that make you a differentiator. And that's the whole concept, like you said, about the product factory, right? I've got the ingredients. How do I bring it up to create the recipe that makes the sense, right? So I would say those are some of the key things. From a money standpoint, using SaaS has really helped us understand the cost of how the software can be kind of consumed and what does it mean for the insurer. And I'm able to differentiate. So it really gives me that horizon to kind of marshal my resources, put the money in terms of where the costs need to be consumed versus where I could save for others. It also helps me manage environments in a more sane ways. If people are not using certain capabilities, I can say, hey, I'm going to keep this open only for this time of the day. I have this monitoring capability now to see how insurers are spending their money too, for whatever I control, right? So I would say those are some of the key things where Duck Creek is differentiating. The other part I would say where Duck Creek is also differentiating is because I have the underlying software for the products, I am able to actually provide value from an end-to-end standpoint, right? Right from when you quote a policy to binding a policy to having a claim to paying out the claim to, like you said, paying your bill when it happens every month, or if an agent changes in terms of who is servicing the claim or the policy itself. So I've got all of these different products and I can provide different kind of what you call like value streams to companies based on what they're doing. So those are some of the, I would say, differentiation kind of stuff that we are embarking on.
Excellent. Along those lines, so you have these systems. They sound awesome. If I was an insurer, I'd love to play around with them. What about we talked. You studied digitalization during your PhD. I should mention the augmented reality. We have some of these themes routinely come up on the show, whether it's digitalization, big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and I'll just put everything else. Edge computing, quantum computing, all sorts of other really high tech stuff that is coming. What gets you excited in terms of some of the technologies that are coming, whether they're new, they're headed our way, you're researching them, of course, as you build your business, but what are some of the other technologies that you see that are going to be making a big difference in this new model that you're building?
I would say a few of these actually in combination, right? That's the interesting part that I see as evolving operating models for these different insurers and even adjacent industries, right? I used to say when I was studying, I used to call this the brick model. Banking, retail, insurance, consumers just going to come together. And you can actually see it happening now. Amazon is doing embedded insurance all the time now, right? It's just an example of retail and insurance and financing all coming together. And then the consumer experience at the end of the day. So it's starting to form. So these technologies, right? AI, ML as an example, many people talked about it, but I would say what has happened now is it has actually become a differentiator. And I'll give you an example of why, right? The claims adjuster used to be a very key role. And if you have seen the latest trends and research, we are not getting that many people who want to be claims adjusters. So how do I kind of use these technologies with data pattern analysis to say that I can do self-service of claims? I upload a document, I upload a picture, it reads the picture, it reads the document, it says, okay, the police has been informed, there is no injuries involved in this claim, and this is the extent of damage. The other car hit me, and the liabilities on the other car, it is up for subrogation. All that stuff can now be done through data. And using AI, ML, and patterning now, I can kind of figure out what workflows make the most sense for this kind of claim versus another kind of claim. It can also determine from a pricing cost standpoint, who is going to be performing the next action on the claim. So I can do that. That's one example. Another thing which is very interesting is IoT, right?
Sure.
With people being in the home all the time and the effect of climate, the effect of floods, all that changing every day, sensory devices could be used to kind of predict health as well as wellness of homes, if I just take that as an example. Sensory technologies are becoming really critical now, right? IoT is an example, but really if you look at IoT plus, like you said, quantum computing, it gives you a different view of propensity of where claims are going to happen. How do you prepare for that better? Catastrophe modeling and then effect of catastrophes can be moderated a lot better with technology. I would say the last thing, just to give you an example, which I am very intrigued by, but I've not seen much yet, is the field I did my doctorate in. Immersive technologies can play a fantastic role in insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking through home inspections, through the home buying process, claims process, vicinity in which the home was located where a claim happened to the home, driving, right? How people drive and how through immersive technologies you can help people practice to drive better. All these things, because now it's more usage based, right? So we can actually look at driving patterns through data, telematics information, feed that into your immersive setup, and actually pattern out saying these kind of driving behaviors make you a better driver and therefore lesser premium. So there is options that are still being explored. I'm hoping it'll happen soon, but those are, some quick examples, I would say, of how technology intrigues me and how it is applicable to insurance.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, and yeah, we've touched on that theme of the smart home, this principle of aging in place. So yeah, the concept of what you're saying now with sort of the evaluation of a well, yeah, it's fascinating seeing it all linked together in one ecosystem.
It's exactly that, right?
Yeah.
They were all pieces. I think they're all now coming together to create value.
Right.
Yeah.
Along those lines, I mean, you said before that you don't have to be great at insurance to build these systems, but the landscape now, as you're describing, is changing dramatically in terms of the software, in terms of the hardware. Talk about sort of the future developers. What does all of this change mean? What is the skill set that the next generation of folks that are coming along that want to work in the Duck Creek system? What does that person look like? How would they adjust to these new 2022 technology ecosystems that they have to fit into?
Yeah, so my take is like, you don't have to be an insurance professional to be a great software engineer. You really have to understand what is happening in the world today.
Right.
You are a driver, you're driving in somebody's car. You are at home. You are either in your own home or a shared home or a rented home, right? You are actually experience some of the impacts of insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives you a good perspective of what do I have to take care of in these situations. So it gives you a business view right from there. You may not know all the rules and regulations, but you know what the experiences could be. For me, really, the way I see it is very basic, right? You need to be curious because you need to understand why certain things are happening. You need to be more open in terms of how are others solving similar problems. And then I would say the third thing is integration and patterns. What are these characteristics that cause a pattern? Can these patterns be kind of ascribed to other different events? And then how do I use integration to create value? So I see those as key needs for technologists as well as people aspiring to kind of become future value-adding software engineers. You still need the guys who do the basic foundational software, right? You need the framework, you need the ways to expose APIs. All that is still going to be there, but to create differentiation, I think these are important. And the other part I would say is data itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to expose data that can be consumed in a way that it's going to add to what the other service might be doing? So it's additive. And then how am I going to create new avenues to capture data that can further inform the patterns that I'm addressing? So that mindset is really going to be useful. So what I've been doing is like, I've been working with some professors just to kind of see in terms of curricula, right? Is there something that we can actually imbibe through their journey? So when they're out of it, they are a little more ready for what this means. So that's something I think many of the professors actually through the pandemic have been more open to versus having rigid courses, saying, hey, we can actually give these practical kind of experiments and things for people to understand how things could play differently. So, yep.
Excellent. Now, as I mentioned in the intro in your bio, you're doing a lot more than leading the technology vision of Duck Creek. You're giving back quite a bit to the community, not just here, but around the world. Talk for a couple minutes about your mentoring activities, if you would. Some of what you're doing there, some of the messages for sort of the next generation, let's say, that's coming along. What are some of the things that you're explaining to this new generation as we enter this very unique period of technological evolution?
Yeah, so just quickly on mentoring, right? Like I told you, a lot of people have helped me in my journey to date, and I still lean on a lot of people. I believe in mentorship a lot because I get different perspectives of the beach ball. I might think it is a particular color, and I hear other people's views saying, no. You can look at it this way, you can look at it this way. So it gives me that whole beach ball kind of phenomenon in terms of how I think through stuff. I have to tell you, when I first got to the US, I was very afraid of tall and loud people. Coming from India, it was really hard for me to see real tall people with these broad ties and long jackets, and they talk loudly. And that was the first ask when I joined Allstate as a contractor, even in '95. I said, hey, can I get someone to help me overcome this fear? So that somebody from Kellogg company actually helped me through that. And it was so interesting because that simple act made me feel like I have things I can also give back, right? That's what prompted me into this. And I've been kind of in mentoring in different ways. One is just from a industry standpoint, right? Adjacencies in industries. Is there commonality between retail banking versus wealth management? Is there commonality between commercial banking and retail banking, consumer lending, insurance, P&C insurance versus retail? That's how I think all this embedded insurance and all have taken shape. So kind of getting these inputs from different players, taking their input, providing it to somebody else, 2 or 3 people then learn, right? That is one way I've given back. Peer-to-peer mentoring is another one I've been engaged in. People who teach me, I teach them, we learn together and get better together. So that has been, and another thing I've learned is whenever you ask people for help, they are more than willing to provide help. And many times we just don't want to, or we say, no, they are busy, but you actually seek out help. More often, they are very helpful to me. So that has been a way. And then I've created communities as a result of that, right? Saying, hey, Ira and Nag both want to help. Okay, we both will kind of meet for 2 other people, help them out. So, so that's one avenue of where I've done mentoring. The other mentoring, like I said, is working with some of the professors and saying, right, we should think through these courses, like the Copenhagen Business School. I'm still in touch with those professors who taught me what I did, right? And I say like, hey, you might want to investigate how this can be done differently, what courses make sense. So that's a different way of giving back. And then the last one really is where through charity, I help underprivileged kids. That's a key thing for me. I do it in 2 ways. Within the US, help with entrepreneurship, resume critiquing, mentorship, things like that, just development programs, career development. That's one aspect. India, it is very different because there is still a large population that just don't have what they deserve. So what can I do differently to help, right? So I recently took on as the chapter president for Chicago for Pratham. And what I do there now is Pratham means first in the Indian language, right? So what can I do so we think of them upfront? So we do different activities, vocational training, give them, teach them, take sponsor villages, right? When we had the COVID, made sure they had oxygen cylinders to help their families. So small things like that. And so that's kept me happy in a sense, saying, hey, I am able to do something for people who don't have what they deserve, right? So I would say those are key ways I kind of give back and mentor. And it balances well in terms of the work I do versus what I give back. It actually makes me feel more even, I would say. Otherwise, I could go cranky. So,
wonderful. Now, what anything else coming up 2022? Places that we can watch you, meet you, conferences you're going to be at, anything else that I haven't touched on that you might want to mention, please kindly take the floor.
Specifically, I think my interests are, like I was saying, in terms of how the technology can influence the industry. So I have been in conversations quite a bit with Microsoft because we are hosting on Microsoft Azure. The thing that I'm also trying to understand really is, this is internal to Health Duck Creek itself, but with all of the different implementations we have made for the different insurers, are there themes that I can pick up where I can make our products better, right? How do we make the products more healthy, provide the features that might be customizations that our customers are doing now, but could be available out of the box. So both of these actually give me inputs in terms of informing how our product roadmaps can evolve and make us better.
Excellent. Really fascinating journey, Nag. Although I'm not in the insurance business, I'm going to keep an eye on everything you're doing because it is quite fascinating, and the parallels to some of the other industries that we get involved in. It's really wonderful. For everybody that is going to be listening to this episode on our podcast or watching on the YouTube channel, again, you've been listening to Dr. Nag Vaidyanathan, Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President, Duck Creek Technologies, pioneering broad digital transformation in the insurance industry, allowing carriers to navigate uncertainty, access market opportunities. Naga, once again, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on this show. Obviously, thank you for everything you're doing to transform this once boring industry. And as we say on this show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow through everything you're doing. Really fascinating story.
Thank you, Ira. Thank you.
Good seeing you.